New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good afternoon and welcome to Finding the Joy in the Journey. I'm Rev Gina and I am blessed to be here with you today. So grateful that you've taken the time to be with us today to talk about joy. What is better than that? I believe it is what we're here for. Love and joy. Finding the joy in the journey is recognizing that it's already here. The most important thing that we can remember is that we are already that unchangeable truth. Spirit is love, is joy, is peace. Therefore, I am that. And each individualized expression of this thing called life is already that. So it's always accessible, but are we reaching it? Are we experiencing it in our daily life? So this show is here to help us do that in different ways. Every person has different gifts and talents, different callings. And this show brings on different people every week that have that experience of joy in their life. Most have gone through some amazing things to be where they are today, experiencing that joy and helping others do the same. So we are here today to know that not only is it accessible, but knowing how to get there. See, unfortunately, especially in the United States, we are a society of bigger, better, faster, more. We have that, what I call destination happiness. Well, when I get on that vacation, then I'll be happy. When I get the promotion, then I'll be happy. When I meet the right person, when I get a reliable car, when I. And the truth is, it's all within us. The stuff often is just the distraction that keeps it from us. So it's learning how to pay attention and see things with new eyes. And today we have someone as a guest that can definitely help us do that. Reverend Ben Burchall has been an amazing catalyst of transformation in his area. And he's actually from Aiken, North Carolina. And it is an area that doesn't have a whole lot of new thought, but he is infusing that truth, that love in amazing ways. His story is absolutely inspirational. And his ministry is called the One Power Ministry. And he has a passion for helping people find their own inner peace, creating that way to help them recognize that just as joy, it's already there. He considers himself a ministry planter. And absolutely, we are definitely going to ask what that is and go into that in a lot more detail. But above all, his presence is joyous. It is loving. And I can't wait for you to meet him. So I'm going to bring him in. Reverend Reverend Ben Burchall, welcome to Finding the Joy in the Journey. Thank you for being here with us today. How are you doing down there in South Carolina?
I'm grateful to be with you. I am doing well, very well. It's a beautiful, hot, humid day, as it almost always is in South Carolina, and I'm loving it.
We were chatting just before we came on, and we realized that we were both experiencing exactly 82 degrees and humid. So we're both experiencing the same weather in Rhode Island and in North Carolina. So, talk about the oneness, right?
Yes, yes.
And we're both also blessed to have air conditioning. So just being extra grateful today for the blessings that life brings us. So, I met you on Facebook. I saw your messages, and I saw, we were in a Facebook group together, and I reached out to you because I loved what you posted. I loved your not not just your attitude, but the whole atmosphere around the ministry, and who and what you believe in. So tell us, how did you get here? How did you become Reverend Ben?
Well, I have been preaching since I was 12 years old. Felt that call very, very young. And I grew up in Baptist and Seventh-day Adventist churches. But, and I would have considered myself a true believer. But I have one of these minds that just can't accept things just because you told me so, or just because it's written in some book. I needed answers, and I was constantly in trouble in church for asking the wrong questions that people could not answer, and eventually left the church at 22. And my life still tended in the direction of ministry because it wouldn't leave me alone. I did not want to be a minister, but everywhere I go, I find myself ministering to people. And of course, the word minister just means serve. We're constantly serving other people in some way. And I moved to Aiken, South Carolina from Long Beach, California, back in 2016. And I came here for a job that I had taken. And I knew that there was nothing New Thought in the area. The closest anything New Thought is in Augusta, which isn't that far away. That's the Unity Church in Augusta. It's literally only half an hour away from my home, but that means crossing state lines to find something New Thought. And then the next closest New Thought church is in Columbia, which is an hour away from me. So I was sort of unhappy that there was no New Thought community here for me. But the question came to me, are you going to sit around and complain about it? Or are you, who is a minister, going to do something about it? So I chose to do something about it. So I started a center here, Spiritual Living Center. And it has been quite an interesting journey since then. I closed the center a few years ago, thinking I was going back to California. And by the time that I was ready to make my move back to California, the COVID thing hit. And I figured, well, I might as well stay here because things were really iffy back in California there. So I stayed put. And I wondered, why am I still here in a place that I didn't like being? And it hit me one day while I was sitting right here in this same spot. I set this manifestation in motion when I was a child. My family is actually from South Carolina. Although I wasn't born here or raised here, my mother's family is from here. And the last time I was here before I moved here was in 99. I came for the funeral of my favorite uncle who had passed. And I realized at that point, what am I going to do in South Carolina? Here I am, a gay Black man who has this weird spirituality. I'm not moving to South Carolina. But because when I was a child, I dreamed about moving to South Carolina and farming. And I used to argue about it with my mother. She hated living here. And I said, well, what does that have to do with me? This is what I want. So I set this in motion when I was a child, even though the many years between then and now, I kind of forgot all about it. I made a decision in 99 that I was not going to move here, yet that manifestation had already been set. And here I am.
Words have power. Words have power, you know. And I apologize. I introed you with North Carolina. It's actually South Carolina. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
But it's now since then, now that because yes, words definitely do have power. How have you started and what are you doing there? I know people can go to your website and take a look at that. But in addition to that, what is it that you're doing there?
Well, I realized that the job was just what got me here. But there was a purpose for me being here, because guess how long the job lasted? I had a plan. I was going to be here for 3 years working that job. I had a plan. I had a side gig where I was a project manager for a publishing company. So I figured between the two things, I would pay off some property that I owned in Georgia, and then I would go back to California. Well, I've been here for going on 8 years now. And for a long time, I really didn't like being here. So when I realized that I had set this manifestation in motion when I was a child, and the fact that I was called to get something started here, I realized that the job was just what got me here. Within 2 months, that job was gone. And that company just kind of went under. So it was just what got me here, because had Spirit said, go to South Carolina, I would have said no. So I came here for the purpose of ministry, even though I didn't know that that's why. And after the pandemic, I was still debating about going back to California or not, how soon to do it or not. And I just knew I needed to stay longer. I couldn't leave until my work here was done. And my work here is to get a New Thought congregation off the ground here. I still did not want to be a minister because of my former, history in church and having that bad taste from church left over. I didn't want to do church or anything that even smelled of church. However, when I started Spiritual Living Center, right from the very beginning, I think the first meeting I had 15 people there. Wow. And it was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this now. The people actually want to hear what I have to say, and they want to come to these meditations and take these classes, and they did. And so even though I closed the center, the vision was still there. So everything that needed to happen to keep me here happened. And I was sitting, this seems to be the spot where I get a lot of revelations, this spot that I'm sitting in. I'm sitting here one day just going, why do I need to be here? And Spirit just said, your work's not done. You can leave when your work's done. I'm like, well, why? What am I to do? And so this vision just dropped in my lap that I'm a ministry planter. I've done this several times before, where I have started ministries and moved on. And so this time around, it was up to me to decide, am I going to be obedient to Spirit within me or not? because I was not going to be happy unless I said yes to what was trying to express through me.
So many, so many ministers have really tried to outrun spirit, that have tried to say, yeah, but that's not me, or no, clearly that, I mean, even for me, it was, the thought of it was ridiculous until it wasn't. And in that moment, I just knew. And it was like, okay, here we go. But so many of us are like, no, no, it really not in that place of wanting that, and for a variety of reasons. But spirit is
Yeah.
persistent.
Yeah, because the spirit isn't something separate from us. It's spirit. We are spirit.
Yes.
So whatever we are believing that spirit wants us to do, that's what's innate within us that we came to planet Earth to do.
Yes.
And if we are not following that calling, we will find that things don't work in our lives. Even those that seem to have money, great careers and everything, their emotional lives fall apart because they're not following that innate call of spirit within them.
And
You
that can be
can't
for
get away from
anything. That can be anything. Your purpose is your purpose. And
it.
whether it's ministry or whatever it may be, if you're not living your purpose, if you're not going for what's in your heart, I mean, I guess this is the life coach in me coming out of me. But absolutely, it's one of those things that, we have something within us. We have our own gifts. We have our own talents. And if we're not using them and living to maximize who we're here to be, then we are going to feel something is amiss. Something's
Yes.
missing. There's a purpose within us. And until that comes out, it's like, that's part of why I choose the Stardust, the background that we have, is because I believe that light is within us that we are here to share. And until you're living your purpose, you will not feel that. You're not the conduit. It's pent up, and there's just so much missing.
You know what I've found as I have said yes to my call is that not only has joy become just a natural state, but my effectiveness of living has just gone through the roof. It's like I don't even try. And what needs to happen happens. But when I'm saying no, things just don't work. And I've found that by exercising this calling of mine, that it brings out all these other parts of me. And I've discovered that I'm not who I thought I was. I've never really liked my speaking voice. I've not liked the way I look. I've never thought that I was a good speaker or a great teacher or that I was charismatic in any way. But as I've said yes to this calling, all of those things that I thought that I was not and judged in myself negatively started to come out. And they came out in such a way that other people are reflecting to me saying, oh my God, when you open your mouth, I receive such blessing. And the temptation, even to this day still, I'm still working on it, is to not receive that and go, oh no, and want to be
It's
humble.
important to receive. It's so important that we receive in every way. It's just not receiving it with the ego. It's receiving it with that deeper part of us that knows, as Jesus said, spirit within me does the work. So I can say thank you knowing fully it's not me, it's spirit. When I write a poem, it comes out whole. It absolutely comes out, and there's no crossouts. I'm not thinking about it. It just comes out as if it was dictated to me. I'm not taking responsibility for that. I might have written it down, but spirit gave it to me. So it's realizing that, yes, take those kind words and realize it, but it's learning how to keep the ego in check, as the true spiritual part of us takes its proper place as the child of divine, living, breathing, moving, having its being as the hands, as the heart of spirit.
Yeah. I remember when I used to live in Laguna Beach in California, and I had a congregation of about 250 people in Orange County. And we had our meetings on Saturdays. And the way our sort of meeting evolved, it evolved into something that sort of looked very similar to the experience people get when they go to Abraham Hicks conferences, where we all gathered in a circle and people would ask me questions and I'd answer, and things would come up that I didn't plan to say. People would ask, "Where did you get that?" I don't know. It just came
It's spirit.
through.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't that I planned these meetings this way. It was just a natural evolution of how things happened in the meeting. And I learned right then that I didn't have to rely on my own power to do ministry. And I didn't have to rely on my own power to plan talks and to direct things the way that I think they should go, but to allow Spirit in that moment
Yep.
to say through me what needed to be said, rather than to say what I planned to say based on whatever intellectual, whatever I wanted to convey, because the intellectual truth isn't what heals.
We prepare for our part, it's our part to prepare whatever message it is. But we are, I love Marianne Williamson. I had seen her speak one time, and there are people that were talking about how when they did their work, they were exhausted. And she said, well, you shouldn't be exhausted because it's not your power. You're the faucet. Spirit's the water. And, you're just there as the faucet. And it doesn't deplete you because it's not you trying to do it. It's not your power. And it's so important to remember that, yes, we prepare, we show up, but Spirit's the one that will make the changes in our lives and help others as well. And how often, you prepare a message and what comes out is not the message that you prepared at all. And it's also, people will hear what they need to hear, even if you didn't say it. That's another gift that happens. When someone will come up to you afterwards and say, oh, when you were talking about this, I could really identify. And I'm thinking, I never said those words, but it's what they heard.
Yeah. And I have experienced that when I am in the right consciousness, I don't have to say a word, and someone will receive exactly what they need, even by just seeing a smile on my face to them or giving them a hug, because it's not about the words anyway. It's about the consciousness in which they're spoken.
Everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness. And we know that. And it's just trying to remind ourselves, we live in this, what seems like a dualistic world. We live in this our society is from the outside in, telling us what we're supposed to think, telling us what we're supposed to buy, telling us who we're supposed to be. And we know in New Thought especially that life is from the inside out. Thoughts are things. So if somebody is telling you, it's not the truth, it's just what they want you to believe, as opposed to what Spirit is choosing from the inside out. So that's where spiritual tools and spiritual practices is so important.
Yeah. And I know we want to sort of get into some specifics about my ministry and more about me, but I do want to share one story.
Please.
In my exploration of my spirituality, there were a few years where I would have told you that I was an atheist, even though that word was never quite a comfortable fit. It was that I was rejecting the gods that I had been taught and could see from the various religions, including the religion I grew up in, Christianity. But I believed that there was this energy and this presence. And I completely at one time rejected even New Thought teaching about it. And my life kind of fell apart because everything that I had built on top of my understanding of principle sort of fell apart as I rejected principle.
Well, when you threw the bedrock out, it all crumbled.
And I went through illnesses and homelessness. And back in 2013, I'd moved to the South, to Atlanta, and moved back to California. And on the way back to California, I was hit by a hit and run driver coming through Amarillo, Texas. Luckily, it was just a little cosmetic damage on the side of my car. Got back to Long Beach. I actually thought I had a place to stay with a friend, and I got there and they snatched it from under me and decided, no, they're going to rent the room to someone else. So in less than 24 hours being back there, I was back out on the street. And one night I was sitting in front of this cafe that I went to in my car because they would leave their Wi-Fi on overnight. So I would watch movies and stuff on my computer. And I had my earphones in watching a movie. I don't remember what I was watching. And something told me to look up. And when I looked up, this white pickup truck was coming right at me. Some dude had stolen this truck and somehow lost control. I didn't hear or see that he had already hit a car that was stopped at the light. And then he barreled right into the front of my car and up onto the sidewalk into the side of the cafe. So later that night, I pulled the car over to the park up the street to sleep. And I was absolutely terrified because I was thinking, well, what if somebody comes and hits the car and I'm in the car sleeping? Nobody will even know I'm in this car until my body starts to stink. And I was just in such a depressed state. And I just wanted to feel better. It wasn't even about trying to figure out a way not to be homeless anymore. If I had to be homeless, I wanted to at least feel better. And right then, this woman came to mind that in the past I just hated, Oprah Winfrey. And I remembered how she talked about gratitude all the time and writing in a gratitude journal and having a gratitude practice. And back then, I used to consider all that feel-good woo-woo stuff. I didn't want any part of it. And I was so desperate.
Because life had been going so well. Who needs woo-woo, right?
Right. And I spent several years trying to get off the street, trying to find a job. Nothing that I did was working. I just wanted to feel better. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to just try this gratitude shit. That's exactly how I said it to myself. And so I sat there trying to think of something to be grateful for. And it took me 2 hours to think of one thing. I finally said, well, I guess I'm glad I have this car. Because if I didn't have this car, I'd be over there literally sleeping behind a bush or something. And so the next night, I tried again to think of things to be grateful for. And I was able to think of 3 things. And the next night, by that next night, I was able to rattle off a list. And what I didn't see happening was that my energy was shifting. Within a week and a half, I had a home and a job that both came to me. A stranger at a cafe offered me a place to stay, a room in his attic. He had been observing me on the street and said he didn't like what he saw. And if I would like to come by and take a look at the room, you're welcome to. And then I get a call from an old friend that I had worked with years ago. She had a job and thought of me and wanted to interview me. within a week and a half of beginning to practice gratitude. Gratitude. And it saved my life, and it completely changed my energy. So the first thing I tell people now is get grateful. If you don't use any other spiritual tool, just start thinking about things in your life that you love and that you like and that you're grateful for. And I guarantee that it's going to start drawing more things to you to be grateful for.
The universe doesn't make it difficult. We need to take the first step. And that's actually the movie The Secret. I that was my first delve into New Thought in that way. And it was the irony is my sister transitioned almost 17 years ago, and when she did, she was the one that had brought that movie to my awareness. So I ended up, I had the book, and when she transitioned, I had 2 sets of everything. And I eventually ended up finding a job it found me. And part of the curriculum was playing that every month to a different group of people. And I thought, that's how much I really have, because I do believe it. I think now you look back at it, the music's a little cheesy or whatever it may be, but the message and the visuals are so powerful, and it's so true. So if somebody is watching this that hasn't watched that movie yet, The Secret, it was, at this point, it's 20 years old, but it really,
wow.
I know.
Yeah.
And the people that are in it are leaders in the New Thoughts movement still. The other one, that the newer version of that, is Heal. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but the movie Heal is another amazing documentary. I believe it's on, you can find it on, there's snippets on YouTube, of course, but I believe that Amazon Prime has it. But it's one of those things that it's an amazing look at what we can really do when we go within. But it doesn't have to start with jumping in. It can start with, well, I'm willing to be willing. And that's the whole thing. It's just showing up, and even if it took you all night, when you have a practice of gratitude, you should be able to rattle them off. But there's still some days when it's harder. And that's when you need to spend even more time connecting and being in that place of willingness. And you don't always have to be thrilled with what's going on in your life. But when I know spirit doesn't move, I'm the one that's either blocking myself off or opening myself up. And even when I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm pissed, I will cuss, I will do whatever I need to do. I will cry, I will do whatever I need to do. But the truth is, my landing pad, my raft is my faith. I can't fall further than that. And it has saved me from the depths of more times than I can count. So, if you're in a place and you're watching this now, and you're in that place of, you're not even just desperation, but just feeling alone, know that you're not. We've all had that. People with the greatest of faith and with none at all. We all understand the highs and lows of it. And like you said, it's starting with just the willingness to be grateful for something. There's something that I have. And even if it's the eyes that you're seeing or the ears that you're hearing this, you have something other people don't. And it's okay. So what do I do with that? It's not about comparison. It's about, really being in a place of appreciation. And you're right. It's a magnet, and it grows.
Yeah. And, one of the things that sometimes stands in the way of people when they hear about a gratitude practice, sometimes the word gratitude is actually a stumbling block for people. And sometimes so is the word appreciation, because a lot of us, when we were kids, we were told things like, you should appreciate what I do for you. You're so ungrateful. So those words take on sort of a negative connotation sometimes to us. So sometimes it's hard for people to embrace a gratitude practice because of the word gratitude itself. So what I tell people is, don't think about it as gratitude. Let's talk about what gratitude really is. The vibration of gratitude is the vibration of love. What do you love? And I have never, ever met anyone that couldn't key in on something that they love. Whether it's, I love my mother, my brother, my sister, the other day at work, a gentleman, I work at a hotel. I have a full-time job outside of ministry, and I work at night, and in the mornings is when I go home. So I'm seeing people as they're getting up and going out to work or wherever they're going from the hotel. And there's one gentleman who is a regular. He came by the desk one morning, and I asked him, "Good morning, how are you?" And he started kind of little complaining, and I said, "Wait, one moment. What are you grateful for? What do you love?" And he said, "My daughter." And I was like, "Yes, that's awesome." So now guess what he does every day when he sees me? He stops and says, "What are you grateful for?"
Love it.
He could key in that he loved his daughter. That's gratitude. So if someone's finding it difficult to think of something that they're, quote, grateful for, it might be helpful to exchange the word grateful for what do I love? Or if you can't even think of something that you love, what do I like? And I don't care what it is. It could be, I like vanilla ice cream. Start talking about why you like vanilla ice cream. I love the flavor. I love how it tastes on my tongue.
It's,
I love the texture of ice cream. I love how it feels when it goes down my
stop, are you going to make
throat.
me want ice cream?
And what people find is when they start thinking about things that they love and they like, it lightens their spirit.
Yeah.
That's the vibration of gratitude.
Yes. You know, we get a choice about what we think about, and sometimes it's easier than others. You know, when we're in grief, oh, it's a tough one. It's a tough thing to jump from grief to being grateful. It can be really difficult. You know, it's a tough thing to think, well, in the midst of fear of not being able to pay my rent, I get a choice to think abundance because it feels so far off. And the truth is, we always have a choice of what we think about. It's just a question of, do we have the practices that help us go to what we choose versus what we don't? Because fear and faith, I'm teaching foundations class, and you know, fear and faith are the same thing. It's the opposite side of the same coin. You're believing, you're having faith in what you want or faith in what you don't want, but you're still practicing faith. So it's learning how to choose differently. You know, we get an opportunity to choose again. And one of the things I often say is, you know, if you're in the right direction because it feels good. When it doesn't, those, you know, whether it's sadness or frustration, that's the rumble strip of life. That's like when you're on the highway, those negative emotions are the rumble strip. I need to go, you know, back to center, back to center. And when we go back to center, we're not rumbling anymore. So that's those, it's letting those negative emotions or frustration bring us back to center. Just like that rumble strip says, I'm veering off. So what do I do instead? And it can be watching a movie, and it's a funny movie or a comedy. You know, it can be zoning out and doing whatever it is that you enjoy, but it's so important that we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I had my cancer scare. It's been over a decade now, and it was real hard to think about gratitude during that time. I'll tell you, I was in absolute terror, you know. And it's funny how, I don't care how long you've been playing with these principles, there are deeper levels of ourselves that we have not yet processed. And it's easy to think, oh, I've got it sewn up. But what will show us if we've got it or not is when these negative things, so-called negative things, happen.
Not
and
if
in that
they,
moment,
when they, because
right,
everybody experiences different
everybody
things.
experiences some. And so when this happened to me and I heard that C word, everything went gray. I didn't hear anything else the doctor said. But when I got home, one of the things that I did in order to even be able to do anything positive for myself, I said, I am so grateful that medical science exists. If I couldn't think of anything else, I was just so grateful that at least I know what possibly I'm dealing with. So sometimes you have to just start with such a small thing that you're grateful for. And then it will build on itself, and it'll build and build. And what I find on the heels of gratitude comes this sort of relaxation that, I was not having either when I had this cancer scare or when I was homeless. There was no relaxation. It was extreme stress. But on the heels of this gratitude, it just changes your energy in such a way that you're able to just...
Yes.
And isn't that what so many people need right now? People are, rushing around with children and house and bills and jobs and, dealing with so many things, health issues. And there's not a lot of space that the external world gives us to just lower our shoulders and unclench our jaw and relax. So we need to give ourselves that space of relaxation sometimes before we can even begin to deal with some of the more high-minded spiritual principles.
I think sometimes too, there's that spiritual bypass that, all is well. I know all is well. I know all is well. And I know for me, for most of my life, I spent in denial. That was my coping mechanism. I didn't look at it. I pretended it didn't bother me. And I got so good at it that I lived decades in that place of denial. Because if I really looked at what things really were, I'd be overwhelmed. So I just kept doing and kept doing. And and many of us in the society, we're human doings, not human beings. So we're running at that pace and going faster. And if I go faster, and the more I accomplished, that was where my joy and worth came from. It wasn't that I was born enough. I had to show you that I was enough. So when it came to, I had my mom, dad, and sister stage 4 cancer in a year. My mother and father had 6 diagnoses of cancer at separate times that they went through different bouts. And then I was diagnosed, and I had 28 tumors when they found them and did surgeries. So, it's one of those things that, I look back now, I was shell shocked. I didn't process. I processed to the best of my ability. And it wasn't a spiritual bypass so much as just coping. Sometimes you are so caught up in life and so in shock. We do the best we can to process where we are, but know that there's still stuff that always needs to be processed. And the more healing work we do, and that is just being kind to ourselves, the more healing and nurturing that we do of ourselves, the more the layers unravel, and that peace, that inherent joy that we had blocked off with the chaos of life, we allow ourselves to be instead of do. I allow myself to feel that inherent worth instead of having to prove it.
And I like that you say inherent, because, when someone asks me a question such as, what gives me joy? The answer is nothing.
It's
Nothing gives
what
me
helps you
joy
experience it.
because I've come to know that joy is natural, it's inherent. What we need to do to experience is remove what stands in the way of us feeling and expressing it. And ultimately, the only thing that ever affects whether we feel joy are the thoughts that we're believing in our minds. So nothing out there gives me joy. I could be sitting right here on my sofa, experiencing joy all by myself, doing nothing, because nothing is making me joyful. Joy is just that, like you said, it's innate inside. And I did not experience it until 2013. I had been depressed my entire life. I was clinically depressed. I even spent some time in a mental ward at one point for severe suicidal depression. And I remember when I was on the 405 freeway coming from work in San Clemente, California, going back to Long Beach where I lived. And I looked on the other side of the freeway and I was in such a depressed state that I said to myself, I wonder what it would be like to drive into oncoming traffic. I was in such a mental state at that point that I needed more help than I could give myself. And I did what I needed to do to help myself. I had people that would tell me, oh, don't take medication, and, psychiatry doesn't work, and, you should just use spiritual means, and blah. Do what you need to do in the moment to stabilize yourself. And sometimes that may be taking an antidepressant to take the edge off so that you can have a space to think. Go to a therapist and sit and talk.
There's so many tools. There's so many tools, and there is no one answer for everyone. It truly is. Even Ernest Holmes says you treat and take the pill. So you're doing both. You are knowing your wholeness and perfection, and realize that everything is spirit. Everything is God. So if everything is spirit, that pill too is spirit. So there's nothing bad. It's not a question of that. It's a question of what's right for you. And every person is different. So,
Absolutely.
the vulnerability, is something that in our society, we're just starting to talk about again. We're just beginning, because it was always almost perceived as a weakness. When the truth is now, I think the younger generation especially gets it. There's a completely different shift in, our parents' generation would, plow right through whatever it was. You had to get it done. Oh, there was the old school way of doing things. And, the new generation, they're dealing with a lot. They're dealing with, it's a very different world. And everyone has their stuff. But, I know when I went to school, it didn't have to, we didn't have active shooter drills. Ironically enough, there was a shooting in my school window when we were a kid, but it wasn't even a big, it wasn't a school shooting. It was somebody had escaped, someone local. But we didn't think anything of it because it was such a foreign concept. No one would ever kill someone in the school. So it wasn't like we were worried. Even with that, we weren't worried, because why would we really be? We didn't have a concept of it.
Yeah, I'm 50 years old, and the worst thing that you would have to worry about in terms of a weapon in the school when I was in elementary school was somebody brought a penknife. You remember those little pen knives?
It was a very different world, 50. I'm also I'm right at the same, almost August 1st I turned. And we get the opportunity to realize that, it is a very different world. And we can learn from, what I call cable ready. They come in knowing how to deal with things that we don't. They're not afraid of the internet. They can figure out your VCR. We don't even have VCRs anymore. But, it's one of those things that years ago, my grandfather wouldn't even touch it. He didn't know how to use it, and he was afraid of it. And
what, too? They can smell it when you're faking it.
Yes.
They can smell it when you're faking it. And that's one of the things that's different now in spiritual circles as young people are coming.
Yes.
It's demanding that we be a different kind of minister than we could have been 20 or 30 years ago. And I'm very clear now that I am not here to inspire people by my perfection. Because if you're looking for my perfection, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not perfect, whatever perfect means. I cuss. Sometimes I have a bad attitude. I'm a real person like
You're
everybody
human.
else.
Yes.
And what I'm here to inspire people by is how I rise out of those things.
Yes.
Not that I never have those moments, but that when I have those moments, there's something, as there's a song that says, there's something inside so strong. And I have experienced that no matter what happens in my life now, my mother just died in March. And since my mother died, um, when I came home from the funeral, I found out that another relative, a cousin of mine in Atlanta, also died as we were having my mother's funeral. And then a few weeks later, I have another cousin of mine murdered in Philadelphia. And it was just an awful, awful few months. And yet and still, there is something inside so strong because I have been in my own spiritual practice for years and years and cultivating that knowing of the oneness and that knowing of the presence. And that which stood in the way of me feeling joy was removed back in 2013. I'm so grateful. So even though I was going through all of that over these past few months, there was something there that just kept me stable, even in those moments when I'm crying and I'm in grief and I'm grieving for my family that is in pain. There's still something there that kept me stable and something that helped me to turn my attention in those moments to the good, because we do have that choice. And that thing just kept pulling me higher to another way of seeing things. And that's what I'm here to give people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here. I'm not here to give people an intellectual understanding of universal spiritual principles, new thought, the science of mind, whatever. I can do all of that, but you can go online and get all of that. There's nothing that I can tell anybody that they can't plug into Google or go onto YouTube and
but you
find.
have a unique way of expressing it, and that's the gift that you have. Just like you said, your passion is helping people find their peace and experience their inner peace. And you have gifts that are meant to be shared, and I'm grateful that you do. And we're doing things differently. The old guard this was religion. You knew where the buildings were. If you didn't, you were damned to hell if you didn't go. And we are not. It's a whole different world than it used to be. And when we talk about spirituality, especially in New Thought, it's not just in the buildings anymore. If anything, we're seeing, especially after COVID, everything turned around. It's finding and going to people where they are. That's what the new ministries are doing. We're reaching people. I mean, even this network, New Thought Media Network, was founded on that, going where people are with good news, as opposed to waiting and letting people find you. So, we are here with the message as the messengers. And it's for us too, because it comes through us.
Yeah. And, I'm sitting here in New Thought Hermitage. This is what this place is called, New Thought Hermitage. This is a little camper that I live in, and right outside the city in the country in Aiken. And, I'm in the process of converting it into a meeting space. But one of the other projects that I want to do is called Mobile Peace Garden. I want a bus or a van that we retrofit into a little indoor peace garden where instead of waiting for people to find New Thought Hermitage, come take a class, or to hear the message come through me, I want to be able to drive that peace garden to the neighborhood, because that's where the people are.
Yeah.
Go right to where they are and just be there and be available for people, because you don't know. Maybe somebody is coming home from work and they're having a very stressful day and they see Mobile Peace Garden. What is that all about? And they come up and they get to sit and to talk to somebody and unload their burden for the day. And you know what? We don't even have to approach people in ministry trying to dump all this knowledge into their heads, because it's really about the vibration that they feel from us.
Yes.
And they will get the message whether we're teaching or preaching at them or not, if we're in the consciousness ourselves. So I have been, as I've been speaking with other ministers, encouraging them to think of how can they get out of their churches and their centers and get into the community.
Yeah. There's a different way of doing it than it used to be before. You know, we're actually in CSL Greater Boston. We're working on community centers, not creating a center that will, you know, do things for the community, but a community center, and we'll also use the building. So it's literally the purpose of the center is the community, and we will also have spirituality there, not the other way around. You know, we're meant to be, you know, of service, and there's a lot of different visions. A friend of mine has a teaching chapter, and you know they're working on getting a food truck kind of thing, but not for food. It's soul food. It's to feed the soul. So they will have all the information and all this, and they go to different beaches along it's South Coastal Massachusetts, and they go to different beaches and go to where people are as they're at their happy place and offer them some, you know, some information. So there's so many different ways to go about it, and you know, I'm so grateful that it's coming about in different ways, that we're not just practicing religion routely, that we are knowing that inner space, that inner peace, that inner divine within us, that power source that is, you know, why we're here. So we've gone through, I mean, it's amazing how much we've covered, and yet there's so much more. So I want to make sure people know this is your email down the bottom, manifestedgood@gmail.com. People can reach out to Reverend Ben that way. And it's again, manifestedgood@gmail.com, and your website, onepower.live. And you know, it's been a wonderful gift to speak with you. And if you can think people can reach out to you or me with any questions that they may have, my email is gina@cslboston.org. We are live on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Sunday. We are virtual, and this week we're actually in person as well. And I would love to hear from you if you have any questions. But it's CSL Boston, Greater Boston. We have a Facebook page. We would love for you to join us on Sunday or on Thursday nights, like tonight. I would love for you to come speak with us. It's Sacred Circle at 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday. It's the same Zoom meeting. We'd love for you to join us for sacred spiritual conversation and beloved community. You are always welcome every Thursday. And it is a wonderful conversation to just hear different people's ideas. So I'm so grateful that you were here today, and thank you so much. Are there any final words that you have that you'd like to share with people?
I would encourage people to go to onepower.live and check me out. If you are in an area where there is no New Thought church or center, feel free to contact me. I can help you with that. Not every spiritual community has to look like a church. I'll be willing to sit and explore what spiritual community could look like for you right there in your neighborhood.
Thank you so much for being here, and we'll definitely got to have you back. We've got so much more that we wanted to cover. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here and knowing the joy and the peace and the love that each one is. So thank you for being a guest, Reverend Ben, and helping people find their way to that inner peace, that inner joy that always exists. Till next week, blessings and love. Namaste.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and